and welcome to the SciFirst MovieTalk episode. In this episode, I'll be discussing Disney's 2019 live remake of their 1992 animated classic of the same name, this time directed by Guy Ritchie. This movie is based on the same story as the original animation, that being the Arabic folktale of the same name, as taken from the series of talks known as 1001 Nights. And in many respects, including the theme and the musical numbers, for the most part, takes elements directly from that movie. But does opt to kind of change a number of other aspects, including some of the words, I think, to some of the songs, in order to make it more of a modern tale and more relevant to today's more discerning viewer. Kind of adding a bit more of a detailed backstory for both Aladdin and Jasmine, whilst also shifting the balance of power somewhat within them both to more of an equal footing, I would suggest. Now, the original animation is pretty much my overall favourite Disney classic, with its absolutely splendidly mysterious and enchanted feel, catchy songbook and fantastic characters, and of course, one delectably entertaining genie, as voiced by the comedy genius that was Robin Williams. So any remake that was always, literally always, going to have a hard time to compete in my book, at the very least. The remake, to give it credit, is not a bad film overall. I did find myself by the end having a thoroughly good time with it. I'm not going to lie. It's just parts of it and its overall feel were just underwhelming, I think would be one word to use. Now, this could be because I did put so much store in the original that I failed to see the kind of the concept and the reimagining of the remake. But ultimately, I think it's because it simply failed to set any new ground for the story itself, to be fair, and take it in any kind of new direction that would have been captivated and enthralled. But again, I must stress that for me, I didn't find it to be a bad movie. It is more than fairly enjoyable. I still found myself singing and dancing away while it was on, and perhaps getting just a little bit emotional towards the end. Just, if you are a lover of the original, then do not expect this version to kind of knock your socks off, you know? For those of you that have not seen the film, so the story is kind of set in the fictional Arabian land of Agrabah, where we are introduced to a young street urchin by the name of Aladdin, as played by Mina Masood, who dreams of a life without having to scrimp and steal for food, not to be constantly on the run, having to look over his shoulder, feeling trapped in his own life. One faithful day, Aladdin inadvertently and unknowingly crosses paths with Agrabah's princess, Princess Jasmine, as played by Naomi Scott, who is trying to prepare to become a better ruler by learning about the people of Agrabah in disguise. So roaming the local market in disguise, if you like, feeling trapped with the expectations being placed on her by an overprotective father and antiquated laws that mean she must marry a prince and cannot become sultan herself once her father, the current sultan, as played by Navid Negban, can no longer carry on his duties. So, from the minute Aladdin and Jasmine meet, there is an instant spark. But the course of true love never runs smooth. And certainly not when you both come from two such different worlds. And, of course, when you have the Grand Vizier to Agrabah, Jafar, as played by Maran Kenzari, determined to take the throne for himself. Jafar has a dastardly plan to usurp the throne, using a magical lamp hidden deep inside the Cave of Wonders, and uses Aladdin to retrieve it, although this also doesn't go quite to plan. Turns out the lamp houses an all-powerful genie, as played in this version by Will Smith, who, along with granting 3 wishes to those who call him forth, on the journey to winning Jasmine's heart and defeating Jafar, he does then help Aladdin realise his dreams and gives him the confidence to be the prince he knows he can be. Inside, of course. So, the one thing that kind of surprised me initially with this film was that it was actually directed by Guy Ritchie. So that would be Snatch. What other films? I've only got Snatch in my mind now, but more crime, thrillery type action films, you know? Oh, and Sherlock Holmes. There we go. So when I found out before the film was released, I thought Disney had taken a trip down the dark side, you know? But I was intrigued. I do like his style for sure. And in the end, was ultimately hoping that Disney would take this chance to do something a little quirky, you know, a little different. Take a few more risks, perhaps. But unfortunately, that just didn't pan out. I did expect more grit than what we got. And in the end, Ritchie simply played it by the numbers. It has a very vibrant, bold, and very colourful cinematography for sure. It's a spectacle, but it uses CGI like it was going out of fashion, which can be quite off-putting at times. And like I said, it is a visual spectacle, absolutely, for sure. But sometimes one which is kind of overpowered by its own sense of grandeur. It feels mixed in its style at times, and in my opinion, not only kind of takes elements from the original animation, but also borrows from the Aladdin Broadway stage show that Disney also produced. And indeed, to be fair, the pantos that make their rounds every Christmas, which don't work collectively, you know? And at times, it even feels more like a pop video. I am actually sounding quite old saying these words. But it just doesn't feel special, you know? If you know what I mean. And unlike the original, it really just failed to make me feel the way that it just doesn't seem to have the same kind of heart and feels a lot more contrived. You can certainly feel its runtime at just kind of over 2 hours, which for me, for the story that it's telling, was just simply far too long, and many of the aspects of the story just seemed needlessly drawn out and stretched. You know, it's supposed to be 1001 Arabian Nights, but it does feel at times a little like a night at my nan's. Sorry, Nan, but the film's strengths are its characters. Well, for the most part, you'll see what I mean. So, Masood and Scott actually do a really good job at bringing Aladdin and Jasmine, you know, their qualities from the original animation to life. And indeed, Scott is simply superb as Jasmine, bringing a very kind of strong character to the forefront, and indeed very much giving all that she has got with her own new and unique song, Speechless. You can really see her passion for the role shine through. I do indeed like the chemistry that does develop between Aladdin and Jasmine. I felt at the beginning of the movie it was a little bit forced, unnatural perhaps. But as we kind of thrown their relationship almost from the start with very little build-up. And so I did feel that kind of some of the mystery and the magic that we got in the original was kind of lost in the process. But the kind of the strength of each character really did warm me to the end of the film. And the love that they had for each other kind of really did feel real enough by the end. However, unfortunately for me, and I've said this before on other people's reviews, but for me, it's Jafar that lets the side down. I am really sorry to say, but for me, he just doesn't come across as despicable enough. A bit of a wet lettuce. And I think Kenzari gives a really kind of damp performance, and very underwhelming one at that. It's almost like he stepped right out of a panto, but with not nearly the kind of that same amount of energy that you need for those shows. I think if we would have had an antagonist that simply seared off the screen and had been a lot darker with the role, turn up the evil quota, you know, a bit more than this, then I think this would have really taken this film to a whole other level. And that is really what Guy Ritchie should have been about. But the character that surprised me the most has got to be Smith's take on the genie. Having Robin Williams as the original genie was simply a masterstroke of genius. And Disney knew it, you know. The energy and the comedy that Williams brought to that role was simply out of this world. So anybody, like I said at the start, playing this role was going to have some pretty big shoes to fill. That quite frankly, in my mind, they never could. And I'm glad to say that Smith, he didn't even try. He didn't even try to fill Williams' shoes. but in the best way possible. He actually managed to make this role his own, something I never thought would be possible after Williams' performance. We have yet another fantastic performance of the genie here, this time injected with Smith's unique style and his humour. And you know what? It really worked. I really was surprised, you know, and he brought the kind of energy and charisma the role required. Furthermore, the soundtrack is still as magical as it ever was, and I must say that I did thoroughly enjoy the kind of the reworked themes that we had, the music numbers and the instrumentals. The two set pieces with the genie, Friend Like Me and Prince Ali, were once again absolutely fabulous to watch, and indeed when the movie kind of really got into its full swing, and they still remain my firm favourites. The music is once again composed by Alan Menken, a true Disney steadfast, if you like, who orchestrated that of the original movie. And indeed, we had all of the original songs, I do believe, apart from the very beginning one that the genie sings, Faraway Land, Arabian Nights, that's it. But those ones, so it had all of them, really, that were originally penned by Howard Ashman and Tim Rice, all of which kind of bring that same splendour of the original movie. Also, as touched on earlier, Jasmine actually gets a new backstory and indeed song penned by Benji Pasek and Justin Paul, who actually brought us the inspirational songs from the 2017 movie The Greatest Showman. The song, Speechless, again as touched on earlier, has a powerful and a strong feel, and Scott really does just bring it home with a very emotional and heartfelt performance. The song is actually reprised later on in the film to kind of mirror Aladdin's One Jump reprise, to kind of add definition to the characters, and it is another aspect of the movie, I think, bringing the two characters onto a more level billing, if you like. There are other redeeming elements of the movie I liked when all's said and done. In contrast to the overused CGI, we do have some really kind of lavish and bold costumes which made each of the characters stand out. And we had a fairly kind of quirky dance sequence as well with Aladdin and Jasmine, where the genie acts as a puppeteer. It was a bit pointless, I think, to the plot, I suppose, but it was enjoyable enough. You know, it was a laugh. We even have a romance for the genie, which I thought was a really kind of nice touch, and a way to kind of have him interact with the other characters in a unique way that we didn't get in the original. Certainly endearing and very charming, considering the story as a whole. So I won't give too much away, but, you know, considering everything all told, very endearing, very charming. So overall, I'm not going to lie, I really thought I would dislike this movie, given my love for the original. I was ready for that. But although needless to say that it's not a par on the original, not at all, nowhere close. I'm not trying to compare them in that sense. For me, it is still a very decent movie, all told, that I really did thoroughly enjoy and still had a tremendous fun time with it. The original always kind of seems so punchy right from the start. This one kind of feels so laboured at the start, to be honest, and unnecessarily stretched, given that it ultimately delivers the same story when all's said and done. It does warm as it goes along, it does, especially when we get to see Will Smith's take on the genie and the romance between Aladdin and Jasmine, you know, Blossom, no pun intended. Indeed, the genie surprisingly remains as one of the top characters in the movie, thanks to Smith's excellent take on the character. But now I must actually admit that as the movie progresses, the trio of the genie, Aladdin and Jasmine do themselves become more the centrepiece of the movie, more so than they did in the original. Especially Jasmine, who has a much stronger and a more dominant role to play. Like I said, I would have preferred Jafar to have been much more sinister, but ultimately, even though it wasn't quite as epic as I was hoping for, you know, it still ended up being a powerful and emotional movie that still ended up bringing a tear to my eye by the end, you know. So, that brings me to the end of this episode. Many thanks for watching. If you like my reviews and everything, please do, and general movie discussions, please do consider hitting that subscribe button. For more movie reviews, trailer reactions, and other movie-related content. We're absolutely loved having you here at SciFirst MovieTalk. We'd definitely love to have you back. But most of all, just thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.